after we have learned بعد ما اتعلمنا بقى how to make or create an equivalent fraction using the multiplication، تعالوا بقى نكتشف مع بعض how to use the division to find the equivalent fraction. And now I'll go to the second part of the build, which is dividing to create the equivalent fractions. And now we will use division to find the simplest form of the fraction. Okay, now to find the simplest form, we have to divide the numerator and the denominator by their common factor. لغاية لما نوصل إن مفيش خلاص common factors between the two numbers except one only. طيب دلوقتي عايزة أسألكوا سؤال. هو does dividing by one whole follow the same pattern as the identity property of multiplication؟ بستخدم نفس الباترن؟ فكروا كده في السؤال ده and try it by yourself. Let's take for example 7 over 1. لو قلت لكم 7 over 1, the answer will be what? The answer will be 7, right? دلوقتي نقدر نقول إن division, yes, it follows the same pattern of identity property of multiplication. طيب في سؤال تاني عايزة أسأله لكم. هو ينفع dividing by any equivalent fraction to 1 follow the same pattern؟ Dividing by equivalent fraction to 1 follow the same pattern؟ طيب هلاقي it is the same thing. ليه؟ عشان when I divide by equivalent fraction to 1 هي نفسها if I divide by 1. The same thing. The answer will not change. طيب but instead of having dividend with the same numbers هيبقى عندي equivalent fraction. تعالوا ناخد example للكلام ده. لو أنا if I divide 4 over 8 لو عملت divide 4 over 8 by equivalent fraction to 1 يعني لو عملتها for example divided by 2 over 2 مش 2 over 2 دي equivalent fraction لل1 الانسر بتاعي هيبقى ايه؟ الانسر بتاعي هيبقى 2 over 4 اوكي؟ ودي equivalent fraction to 4 over 8. As you can see, dividing by equivalent fraction to one whole follow the same pattern of multiplication. لما عملت divide للequivalent fraction ل1 اللي هي 2 over 2 follow the same pattern. And now you can use the division. ممكن بقى نستخدم division by equivalent fraction to 1 in order to simplify the fractions. كلنا عارفين إن multiplication والdivision are inverse operations عكس بعض. And that's why it makes sense إن إحنا to use the division to form the simplest form of the fraction. عشان نوصل للsimplest form نصغر الفراكشن أكيد هنستخدم division. We need to find an equivalent fraction with smaller numerator و denominator. تعالوا بقى نطبق الواي دي to the first example problem number 1. Problem number 1 بتقولي إيه؟ بتقولي إن 15 over 20 equivalent to 3 over 4. طيب بيسألني إزاي هنقدر نستخدم division to prove it. We will start by writing down the common factors بتاع النومينيتور والدينومينيتور. طيب إيه الcommon factor بتاع 15 وال 20؟ يعني إيه الcommon factor؟ يعني بختار number I can divide both the numbers by it. طيب here I have 15 over 20. إيه الcommon factor between 15 over 20؟ تعالوا كده نفكر مع بعض. Yes, I find 5 is common factor. إشمعنى اخترت 5 common factor؟ Because 15 can be divided by 5 وكمان 20 can be divided by 5. So if I make this divided by 5 divided by 5, 15 divided by 5 equals what? Equals 3. With 20 divided by 5 equals what? Equals 2, 4. So the equivalent fraction to 15 over 20 is 3 over 4.
تقدر تتابع كل دروسك على تطبيق مدرستنا بلس. مدرستنا، المستقبل يبدأ الآن.